we're all made up of genes. So of our mom, like from our mom and our dad. And we all have a little bit, so everybody knows that. So we're a little bit of each. And some of us have genes that are just a little bit stronger than another. So sometimes we get weaknesses from our mom, sometimes we get weaknesses from our dad, sometimes we get strengths. So it just depends. And basically it's just really trying to know what they are for each one of us, because we're all a little bit different. Like I said before, we're all a little different and unique, and getting them strengthened is what is very important.
Hello and welcome to the Wellness Trinity podcast, where we interview top holistic experts and bring you natural solutions for modern day wellness. Let's get started with your host, Dr. Jacqueline.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining the Wellness Trinity podcast. I'm Dr. Jacqueline from thewellnesstrinity.com, where we provide natural solutions for modern day wellness. Today, we are going to discuss on our Women's Health podcast series, the relationship between nutrition and our genes, with Wendy Nickell from nutritionworks.vegas. Just a little disclaimer before we get started, what we discuss in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you do with the information is to be used at your discretion, as the recommendations are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This episode was brought to you by CellCore Biosciences. Creating solutions that work is what they do, and restoring hope and health is who they are. Are you having a hard time conceiving? Are you concerned about raising healthy children? Would you like to age gracefully? These are all concerns that many women have. And in order to have healthy pregnancies and children and age gracefully with youthful skin, vibrant wellness, and incredible joints, we need to thoroughly cleanse the body in this day and age, because there are more than 85,000 chemicals that are just plaguing the earth. And these chemicals cause a whole slew of problems, and a lot of it is related to the backup in the liver that causes diminished hormone production. CellCore Biosciences protocol systematically removes layers of infections and toxins, thus fully cleansing the body. It gets you back to homeostasis, where your body is happiest and healthiest when done correctly. I am happy to be on this protocol, and I'm actually waiting to get pregnant because I want myself and my husband to be thoroughly cleansed before I even think of having a baby. And I don't fear growing old and falling apart, because I know that if my body is at homeostasis, it's going to be just fine. I was told I look 10 years younger in my new headshot, so this stuff works. To learn more about the CellCore protocol, go to thewellnesstrinity.com/CellCore Detox. So Wendy Nickell is a genetic nutrition specialist, master herbalist, functional nutrition practitioner, certified natural health practitioner, licensed massage therapist, and also known as the health detective. Wendy became passionate about her health problems when conventional medicine gave more and more pills for her symptoms. When she asked the doctor to help heal, he didn't know what to do. That's when she became empowered to learn about how the body works and what she could do to heal herself. She went to school and learned functional nutrition, medical massage, and became a master herbalist, as well as a genetic nutrition specialist. As technology advances and the science allows, we dig deep into understanding the best way we can support biochemistry on an individual level. So Wendy Nickell, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jacqueline.
Well, it's an honor to have you, and I feel like we're kindred spirits already. I'm looking at your past history of everything you've studied, and we actually have some overlapping schools we've studied at, but it's just funny how people that are passionate like me and you, we open the can of worms and we want to know everything. So doesn't it seem like that? I mean, with your background, it's like something after the next, and it's like never ending, right?
Exactly. We can always dig deeper.
So I'm really curious. I mean, what even led you to all that? Why did you even study that? I mean, we heard in your bio that you had some health challenges that doctors weren't addressing and didn't honestly know what to do. So what were you going through?
I was having some health issues in my late 20s, and went to a highly recommended doctor and was really frustrated with my health and didn't know what to do. So because he was highly recommended, I assumed that he was going to give me the information that I needed to help me heal. And I didn't word it correctly with him. So what happened was he kept giving me medications. And as typically happens with conventional medicine, I ended up having side effects from the medications. And when I went back to him after about the third or fourth visit, I said, can't we just fix the original problem? And he really didn't know what to do with me. And he said, this is what we do. And he turned around and he left me sitting on the exam table. He just left the room.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my wake up call right there. It really was. It was shocking. But at the same time, I said to myself, I have to figure out, like, this isn't working for me. So he did his best. He knew how to give out medications, but he didn't know how to help me to heal, which is really what I was asking. And so, yeah, so that's when I said, I've got to go to school. I've got to learn how to do this myself.
Wow. Wow. So that is the catalyst of why you ended up doing all those different certifications.
Yeah, exactly. I started taking some extra classes, and what really led me into the Nutrigenomic testing was I started learning about what was going to be the future, and that intrigued me. Back in 2000, I think it was 2005, I went to a convention, a functional medicine conference, and one of the speakers said, mark my words, we are going to be learning about nutritional genetics in the near future. It's going to take a few years, but we will get there. And that really is where healthcare is going. Mm-hmm. So when he said that to me, a little light bulb went off in my head, and I said, I'm interested in that. But when he started describing what it was and talking about the genome project, the human genome project, it was just over my head. I was like, mm-hmm. I don't know if I want to know about that, but I'm intrigued. But I thought, I don't know enough yet. So I'm just going to hang tight and continue with my functional nutrition training. So that's exactly what I did.
Okay, so you deal a lot with irregular menstrual cycles. We're talking about female health on this series here. So you deal with it all, the PMS, the weight gain, the history of cystic ovaries or PCOS.
Yes.
Decreased fertility, hair loss. I've dealt with hair loss, and I have a whole head of hair now, but that's a whole different story in itself. History of miscarriage, fibrocystic breast, excess facial or body hair, and menopause are some of the main things that you deal with when it comes to women's health. Can you talk about nutrigenomics. Can you just break down a little bit, just explain for the audience, what is that and how does it relate to all these different symptoms that women are having?
Sure. So it's a common question when I talk to people about it, they don't always understand what it is. So I try to break it down as understanding that nutrigenomics is the interface between genomics and nutrition. So it's basically the science of how naturally occurring chemicals in foods alter molecular expression of genes in each individual.
Wow.
So I firmly believe that diet and nutritional intervention must be personalized to the genetic characteristics of the individual, because there is not one size that fits all. So all of us are uniquely different.
Okay. Okay, so we're all uniquely different. We're born with a set of genes.
Yeah.
And then you do this test. So what are you finding when you do the nutrigenomics test?
So there's several different panels that we can run. So the Women's Health Panel in particular, it looks at 26 different genes. And in there are 8 different categories. So in there, it breaks it down into specific categories that really help to understand what categories and areas that we want to focus on for that particular person. So I hope that makes sense. So
okay.
So
there are certain things that will be highlighted that is going to be more that person really needs to think about if they want to be healthy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we were talking off air a little bit, and you had mentioned that there's certain weaknesses and there's certain strengths. We don't really necessarily want to just think, oh no, we have these weaknesses. We want to understand that we have strengths too. So how does that relate to our health and knowing that piece of information?
So when we know what our strengths are, we can basically say these genes over here are very strong for us. We don't have to worry about those, right? They're going to stay strong. It's the weak genes that we want to focus on as far as being able to change through diet and lifestyle. So we can focus on the characteristics of those genes and help enhance those. So lifestyle is huge. Often that is overlooked, but diet is important, of course, which as a nutrition therapist, I'm very much focused on that. But the lifestyle, as in sleep and even meditation, all of that is very, very much important to how those genes will react. So I hope that makes sense.
So it cut out for a second. You said meditation, right? And then something else?
Yes, so meditation and sleep are very important, and rest overall.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very important. It goes along with diet and as to how the genes will behave. So the genes are very, very much dependent on how we treat them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that a lot of people worry about is often I have people come in and they tell me, well, my mother had PCOS, so I'm probably going to get that too. Or my grandmother had breast cancer, so I'm worried that I'm going to get that, and I want to do something about it, which is a great way to look at it. But knowing that there's a probability for that person to have an issue with that, we can then run these genes to find out specifically not just what genes are weak, but also look at the pathways too. So those are supported. They're very important.
Yeah. So when people think, oh, well, for me, example, I have a great example actually with my family. My grandma on my mom's side died of breast cancer when she was about 58. So I didn't really know my grandma growing up because she died when I was about 3 months old. And then my dad, he died of cancer. It was in his lungs and spread through his bones. And it was actually started, I don't even know where it started, but it was in his esophagus too. So it kind of just went all over his body. It's what it sounded like. And he was on oxygen tanks at the end. So he was only 38 years old. So naturally, I think in the back of my head as a young child, I probably, without even realizing I was thinking it, thought, I'm doomed to die of cancer. I have it on both sides. My dad died at a very young age, and I'm just gonna get cancer and die. And so I ended up studying at Hippocrates Health Institute when I was about 24 years old. And I remember them saying about breast cancer in particular, only 3% of breast cancer is inherited. The rest of it is diet and lifestyle, which is exactly what you're talking about, right?
This is it right here. We've got the information available to us to empower us to create health. So that's what I mean when I say our genes are very dependent on how we treat them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, to sum all that up, I mean, we're not necessarily doomed to die at a young age like my dad did or my grandma did. Just because they had cancer doesn't mean I have to have cancer, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there is a chance, yes. But with this test that we run, we can really fine tune what it is we're going to work on to strengthen. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of good information with this.
Okay, well, let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So why would anybody get this test done?
So, well, trying to think of where to start with all this. So
I know we've already unpacked so much that I almost feel like that's a silly question to ask, but I'm sure someone's out there thinking, well, okay, my doctor or my functional, nutrition therapist or whoever they're going and consulting with already gave me a whole list of things that I need to get tested for, or maybe they're not testing, but let's just say they did. So why would they want to do this one in particular?
So the Women's Health Panel in particular, it would be very helpful for a woman who's concerned, like we were just talking about, for a concern about getting a cancer or getting some sort of a of a health problem, it will empower the client to really work on strengthening certain things. So we can really target, like I said, the pathways, but mainly it's empowering and knowing what your cellular strengths are and your weaknesses. So it's good to know both. And that gives you a fighting chance to change your health destiny. So we want to know if your genes react by turning on or turning off. And again, how we treat the genes really determines how healthy we're going to be. So
okay,
it's
so
very, very helpful.
does the test, if you have a particular gene that can be more, I don't even know if that's the right word for to say it. Let's say it has a SNP, so it's going to be weak, right? Or it's more likely to be weak if it has a SNP, as far as I understand genetics and doing these type of tests. So does the actual test show you,
Right.
well, then this type of food is going to be better for you?
So not in a particular food, but it might, so there's recommendations that come back with the lab, from the lab. And with that, it guides me as a practitioner to help show people this type of fasting might be good for you. Like somebody has a glucose issue, right? So hypoglycemia, or if they're hypo, I could guide them through guided specific type of fasting. So that would be helpful. And again, women with PCOS sometimes have issues with hypoglycemia.
Okay.
Yeah, so blood sugar testing. So again, one of the things I would watch for is, or maybe work with another practitioner to run specific tests. So it will guide me on other lab work, extracellular lab work, blood serum testing. So there would be certain things we'd want to keep an eye out for.
Okay. So this particular test is called Nutrigenomics, right?
Yes, so it's a category.
Okay.
Right? So there's many different kinds. There's a foundational test. There's a men's health test. There's also one for autophagy. There's another test. Yeah, so there's many different kinds. So we can target what it is that the client might be concerned with, if they have a problem area or they're worried about something, or if there's even just a general wellness test also.
Okay, so on that note of fasting and autophagy, I think that's fascinating that you can pinpoint how the genes can be related to how effective you can do a type of protocol like that. Do you find that there's certain times where it's not recommended for people's genetics to do fasting?
Yes. So if someone is hyperglycemic, I would definitely be very cautious with that. I would have to gather a lot more information and find out. Usually fasting's not recommended for them. So, and for somebody that's hypoglycemic, I would guide them, but very cautiously. We would modify things carefully. We would stay in close contact while they went through a fasting. Okay.
So with the whole idea of epigenetics and our genes can turn off and on basically with our environment, I'm just trying to understand if somebody has a particular SNP that maybe they're more likely to be hypoglycemic and they're not, can they consider fasting?
Yes, so that's where the functional aspect comes into play. And I would work closely with them to see how they react. We'd start out slow, baby steps.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, great note on fasting, because I've tried to do it myself a bunch of times in different ways and stuff, and it just, I don't know, some people are just gung-ho about it, and I just don't feel very led to it personally. I mean, I definitely am for it for particular clients that are dealing with really, really bad health issues. But at the same time, I mean, I've dealt with my own things, and it just never seemed to fit with me. So I'm kind of really curious. I want to do this with you, actually. I'm really curious what my autophagy would look like and how my genes say whether I should fast or not. So that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead and expand on what you were going to say.
Oh, just about the autophagy. I think most people benefit from it. So for those that don't know, autophagy is a process where the cells can clean house, so to speak. So it gives them a little rest. And that's typically where like a cellular detox happens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty beneficial because most people, especially as we age, our cells become more polluted and become more sluggish. And so if we go through a process of fasting or intermittent fasting, we can really benefit people towards feeling better. It kind of gives the cells a break.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
It's like a restart.
Yeah. Well, so it gives it a break, but in autophagy, it actually helps the body to rebuild too, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. So it's like if you're going to build a house, you're not going to go ahead and put all the roofing materials on the property first. You know, you're going to start at the foundation. You're going to work there first. So it's a step-by-step process.
Okay.
And be done in the correct order. Yeah.
Sorry, kind of cut out again.
Oh, I got you here. I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay.
So can you repeat that last word on autophagy? Because I'm fascinated by this, and I know that a lot of people that are watching are probably interested to know as well, and we kind of got a little bleep here.
Okay, so autophagy is where the cells clean house, and it's important to do it in the correct order. So there's a little process, and I like to guide people on it, and the fasting and intermittent fasting will help with that. So it's important to do it in the correct order. Like when you're building a house, you want to make sure that you don't put all the roofing materials on the property first. You want to start with the foundation. And so it's a guiding process. And as you start to build, you go ahead and give a break also. That's what the fasting does. It gives a break so that the cells can clean house. So then you can go ahead and build again. So I hope that makes sense.
Well, that break is, so if we're eating, the cells are going to have to be working. So that break is basically, you're not having to digest your food. Now we can actually clean the body with those enzymes and everything that the cells would be a part of, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. So food is it takes a lot of energy to digest food. So if we give the body a break from that, it actually not only helps you to kind of clean your digestive system, but it actually helps on the cellular level. And that's why I'm such a fan of it.
Okay. Well, that's a great word on autophagy. And I think that could be a whole different podcast in and of itself, because it's something that I want to ask you personally before we get to the next question, though, is what type of issues are you recommending fasting or particular types of fast for in terms of women's health?
So that's where the individual, it would take some information from me. I need to get a client's history, and I need to know, how dedicated they can be. I try to meet my clients where they're at. So there's really no black and white, or there's no protocols. I really modify my suggestions for each individual client. So it would be difficult to put that into just a bold, this is what I do. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious, is there certain types of symptoms like for diagnoses like cancer? I mean, I hear fabulous words for encouragement of people doing fasting for situations like cancer, because it kind of just seems to eat up that tumor with autophagy.
Yeah, so I would work as a practitioner, I would work with their oncologist and want to make sure that there's clearance and support from the oncologist, making sure that this client is up for it, right? So I certainly don't want to interfere with any protocols that the oncologist has the cancer patient on. But if they're done with treatments, and a lot of times I have cancer patients are usually my best clients, because they're very motivated. They've really looked at their health very closely and so educated. They're usually very educated, and they're on board. So I really enjoy working with them, because they're very excited about their healing journey. You know, they've already been through a lot, and now they're really trying to work hard, and they seek my advice, and they communicate well.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy working with cancer patients. So sorry, you asked a question about.
Well, no, I think that's awesome that you bring that up too, that they're very motivated. Because one thing I'm always trying to figure out when I work with clients is, how do I get in their head to make them make a move? You know, and it's unfortunate that it has to get that far for some people, which basically is kind of what I'm gathering from this. It's like they've gotten so far to the extreme of with their health that now they're just like, I'm doing anything to survive. And it's kind of unfortunate. I mean, we were talking about before we got on here about preventative. I mean, what if we did certain things with our diet and our lifestyle, you know, using tests like what you do, where we can actually not have to go down that rabbit hole, right? Not have to be motivated by the fact that we got to a point that is just so toxic and so everything just out of control in our body.
Exactly. So that's what we like to do, is to help prevent. But some people aren't motivated until they get to that point, or they thought that they were doing things really healthy for their body, and they just didn't know. They thought they were eating really clean, and they were working out, and they were trying very hard to be living a healthy lifestyle, but that's not what their body needed. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's where that's where expertise comes in.
You know, you bring up a good point too, because I will say this too. There's a lot of people that are really trying. I'm a perfect example. Before we got on the call, I was talking about how I'm going through my parasite cleansing right now. And I mean, you would look at myself and you think, oh, Jacqueline's the healthiest person I know. She grows her microgreens. She drinks tons of E3 Live. She, you know, eats everything organic as much as possible. She takes all her supplements. She's always detoxing. She does a sauna and a brain tap. You know what I mean? The list goes on. I have my own personal gym. And that would make people insane to even begin trying to chip away at it. True. But the thing is, if we don't get specific and deal with the specific types of challenges that a person is often, it could really veer you down the wrong path. And for me, what I realized recently that I wasn't addressing that needed to be addressed with parasites. And I work for the parasite company, which is funny in itself. But now I'm dealing with it and having great results. And it's just, it's life-changing when you find these little details that help, basically biohacking our body.
So that's what you're doing, and you're customizing your healthcare, and you are taking responsibility for it.
Yeah. So I want to know a little bit more about this test. How is this testing any different than what people can find online?
So yeah, I actually get that quite often. People ask me that. And what I like to explain is there's so many companies now that are offering this, and it's available to the public, which is great. There's a lot of great information out there. But I like to caution people that when they do purchase a DNA nutrition package, they usually get a ton of SNPs that have been tested, and they get so many that are not relevant. All of us have SNPs that are inefficient, and we adapt to most of them. And when the consumer goes online and gets a few hundred of those genes tested, they are not of importance. And that's what I try to explain to people is our bodies adapt very well to the genes that are not relevant. So yes, they are part of our genetic makeup. They are important to a certain degree, but most of them are genes that we've already, if they're weak and broken, the SNPs are broken, then we've already adapted to most of them. So it's great to get refinement, and that's what I like to do is with my testing is really refine what it is we're working on for that client. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. So what is a SNP, first of all, for people that don't know?
So yeah, so we're all made up of genes. So of our mom, like from our mom and our dad. And we all have a little bit, so everybody knows that. So we're a little bit of each. And some of us have genes that are just a little bit stronger than another. So sometimes we get weaknesses from our mom, sometimes we get weaknesses from our dad, sometimes we get strengths. So it just depends. And Basically, it's just really trying to know what they are for each one of us, because we're all a little bit different. Like I said before, we're all a little different and unique, and getting them strengthened is what is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I've explained that very well.
So SNPs, they're basically what we're going to be more prone to being weak in, right?
So SNPs is like, they tend to be, they're broken. We have strong genes and weak genes. So a SNP is single nucleotide protein polymorphism. And they are, some of them have little broken pieces in them. And that's where we have like typos. I like to explain it. They're like typos. So little broken pieces. So the body is always copying and making SNPs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to repair those or strengthen those areas that are weakened.
Mm. Okay.
So,
Okay. So you've had a lot of family members that have had hormonal challenges and other female problems. What can we do to alter those and change your destiny, basically?
so yeah, so one thing in this testing, when we run the panel, we look at, like I said before, 26 genes. And those are the genes that are probable issues for a lot of women. So when we look at those 26 genes, we will put those 26 genes into 8 categories, which I'll explain in a few minutes. And those categories are methylation, clot risk, estrogen metabolism and clearance, which of course is detoxification, follicular sensitivity, hormone metabolism, metabolic risk factor, hypertension, and vitamin D transport. So this testing looks at both the lifestyle recommendations and suggestions, and the laboratory puts in a little bit of information also of their recommendations, and I take that into consideration. And it's a fabulous tool to help guide me to really customize a plan for each client. So I can lead into one of the most common questions now that I often get from women, which is, how can nutrigenomic testing help with hypothyroidism?
Mm-hmm.
So don't we know so many women that have hypothyroid problems?
Oh yeah, especially where you're at in Las Vegas. It's
Yeah.
I could go down that rabbit hole with Las Vegas and why, but I want to hear what you have to say.
So yeah, well, women are typically, more than men, 20 times more probable to get thyroid problems. So in this testing, a lot of people think that there would be a gene that would say, okay, you have or you will get a problem with thyroid, but there isn't one specific test or one gene that says that you're going to have a thyroid problem. So with that said, thyroid hormones, just know that they work with the steroid hormones. And this is why it's important to have objectivity by running blood work. So this is why I like to work with other practitioners and have them run blood work too, to make sure that we're seeing what's happening in real time with that client.
Well, yeah, so what I'm wondering too is, so what you're saying, it's not the gene actually being expressed or not expressed, right? It's just, this is what you're born with. And then the idea of doing other types of blood work or other types of labs is, let's get real time how it's being expressed, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So it's important to still get annual blood work, or depending on what's being tested, maybe a little more frequently. It's really important to keep an eye on that. So I like to collaborate with other practitioners to help make sure, because it's not my job to evaluate people's labs as far as their urine or their blood serum. But I do take that information into consideration as to what areas might need to be strengthened. Or, yeah, looking at what's weakened. So it's information for me as a practitioner. Even though I'm not diagnosing, I want somebody that looks at those labs, though, all the time to evaluate and make sure that, there's not something more serious happening with this person.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So how does estrogen metabolism play into all this?
So, well, part of that is the methylation. So a lot of people don't know what that is, but if I can explain a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
So that does lead into some of that. But this test in particular looks at vitamin conversion and delivery. That's what methylation is. So it's a primary biochemical process in the body that involves the addition of a methyl chemical group to a vitamin or a neurotransmitter. And neurotransmitters, by the way, are chemicals that are used to produce specific effects in the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And these specific neurotransmitters, the genomics assess a woman's risk for anxiety or depression. And I've had a lot, I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of women come in that have at one time or another have had issues with that.
With anxiety and depression.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now that I'm aware of the parasites I've been dealing with, as I've been cleansing them out, the so parasites release biotoxins. They're toxins from infections. And so I can't believe how I've actually felt anxiety during releasing these.
Okay.
I felt it before because I was feeling the parasites, but as I'm releasing them, I would be like, oh my God, I'm on cloud 9. And then I'm like, oh my God. And so it's a process. But yeah, I mean, that's my personal experience. But I mean, yeah, people are dealing with it for all kinds of different reasons. I mean, if you don't have the right nutrients to build your GABA or your serotonin, which are neurotransmitters, you're going to probably have some anxiety.
Right, right. And so then there can be further testing specifically for neurotransmitters if needed. So if that's an issue, I would encourage my client to take a look at that and get the testing done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So when you get this test, now when you're supporting people nutritionally, are you using supplements and food or just food?
No, I'm everything. I'm using diet, so food, right? But I'm also using, I'm finding out information about their lifestyle. I want to know, are they happy? Are they sleeping? Are they in a relationship that's not benefiting them? I want to know what quality of sleep they're getting. Do they need to have a sleep study? Often that needs to be done.
Right.
And many times they don't want to do it, or they don't even consider it as to being a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like as time goes on, especially in this last year or two, it seems like a lot more people are talking about sleep and how important it is. Americans, it's been for so long where it's prized to go and achieve. And it's like, how many things can we check off our list? And we're just in this rat race trying to survive. And it's gotten out of control, especially when I was living in California. That was a whole different story in itself. But sleep is one of those things like, oh, I'll just sleep when I'm dead. But I don't think a lot of people, when they're saying that, are realizing that if you don't sleep, you're going to die sooner.
Yes.
And you're probably not going to live a very quality, good life. It's just what it is. You're not going to be healthy. Your body recovers at night. Do you want to expand a little bit on the sleep topic?
Oh, a little bit. Sure. I usually just try to find out, well, here's a helpful tip. A lot of people don't sleep in a dark room. Many people have, either they leave the TV on or they have a nightlight. Sometimes they have an outside light, like a street light that's coming in the window. And I try to explain to people that the pineal gland right here is very sensitive to light, even though your eyes are closed. If this section here gets light in it, it wakes us up. It causes us to start to wake up. Even though you're sleeping, you're still not in you won't get into a deep sleep if that is interrupted, if there's light in the room. So
it's sometimes the little things that make such a huge difference. And even I'm thinking about it, like I know it's one of those things that's like, I personally know that you need to be in a dark room. I like wearing an eye mask, and sometimes I just forget or just don't put it on. But if I don't have it on, I could tell that, because we put a salt lamp out in the room outside, and I can kind of see it as I'm sleeping if I don't put the mask on totally. So it really does help me go to sleep. And I think some people might be thinking, well, how would that help? But I love how you explain how it connects to our pineal gland, and if that's off, then we're not going to be able to produce as much melatonin and be able to get a good sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course we all know about the iPads and the phone devices that are next to our beds, those need to go off hours before we get into sleep. So yeah, at least 2 to 3 hours, I try to get people to make sure that that's out of the room or turned off, so you don't hear it dinging or you're not thinking about it. So yeah, the deep sleep is very important. It affects people's mood and a lot of other health issues too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So basically, and we probably said this a few times, but lifestyle can affect our genes, right?
Yes.
That all said to basically sum it up to that. So, in another way we can think about it, you said relationships. If we have negative relationships, that can cause the expression of our genes to be negative too, right?
Right. So what that does, if I can explain a little bit more about that, a negative relationship causes stress on us. So a lot of people think of stress as being, oh, I'm busy, I got to go, and lots to do. But the emotional stress of being in a relationship that's not healthy, that causes us to have higher cortisol levels. And our body, we've got the gas pedal down all the time. We've got too much cortisol, and I'm generalizing. I don't know many people that are calm and relaxed most of the time when we should be. But it's really important that all aspects of our life is we have downtime. So that's where the meditation comes in handy. And it's important that we don't have the cortisol levels raised too high all the time. The body, it causes inflammation. It's a direct link to inflammation, and that will cause anxiety and depression and a lot of the women's health problems that we're talking about today.
Okay. All right. So let's sum that up again. So we have negative relationships. Someone's in a bad relationship. It's toxic. And especially, a lot of women, I think, don't realize their worth. There's been this black and white gray thing going on with, have you seen that on social media with all these women posting about women supporting women, basically?
Yes.
And so someone sent me it. So I was like, all right, whatever, I'll post the picture. But I'm just thinking about that as we're talking about this. And how often do women look at other women and get jealous? And, we tear each other down. And that just stems from an insecurity inside ourselves. So if we're insecure about ourselves, now we're tearing down someone else. And then how can that affect our relationship even with a friend, right? Or a colleague, let alone what kind of man are we going to attract into our life if we're insecure and don't love ourselves?
Right. It doesn't create a healthy relationship the opposite sex. So yeah, that's very important. Yeah. So it's really important to evaluate everything. And that's when a client comes into me, I'm asking a lot of questions. Usually I see, for the initial consult, I see people, and it's usually a 90 minutes to 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I want to know everything about their life. I want to know their history. I want to know their current situations. So
yeah. All of the health detective, that's what you are.
Yeah. So I'm nosy. I'm asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, and really that's what any type of health practitioner that's good really should be asking those questions, unless they have, I don't know, a really fancy biofrequency machine that says it all. But even at that, you still kind of need to dig a little bit deeper if you're seeing certain markers come up. Even the machine I have, basically, it would show your emotions. But I want to know why it's coming up. Let's deal with this root. If we don't start talking and having that conversation, sometimes I think things can be dealt with without having that conversation. But it's amazing how when you're asking questions and you're probing someone and you're going back and forth, how healing can happen even in just that moment for what that thing needs to be released. Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to sum up that relationship thing. So I gave that idea of a toxic relationship and where it's coming from, right? And then you said it increases cortisol. So I love how you connected that part of it in their hormones. And then as a result of increased cortisol, we have more inflammation in our body. And then now as a result of too much inflammation, we have anxiety, we have depression, and who knows, the list goes on, right? That, like, inflammation is a big root of why people are sick. And then it just dives deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole as we try to keep trying to figure out where the root is of the inflammation.
Yes. So yeah, that's why it's important to ask a lot of questions and really try to figure out where is this person, not just physically, because they're coming in because of physical issues, but also understanding their emotional state too. So It all fits. We're all one. It's not just parts and pieces. That's what I always like to tell people. You might be coming into me for PCOS or an infertility issue, or you're concerned about, your painful menses. But we look at that, but we're also looking at the whole picture, the whole person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when people take this test that you do, how is a sample obtained?
It's done with just a simple cheek swab. And if people don't, in fact, I can help people anywhere they are. I can have a kit shipped off to someone and instruct them on how. We just take a 2-minute sample on the inside of the cheek. It's done with just a little swab, like a large Q-tip. It gets shipped off to the lab. And within about 2 weeks or a little less, I have the results back. And that is kept private, by the way. Some people are concerned about privacy. It is kept private, and in fact, the lab doesn't even have the report. They send the report to me, and then I send that on to my client. And
Wow.
there's no record of it between the two of us. So it's a private company, and it's not sold anywhere else. It's not going to be ever sold or out on the World Wide Web.
That is actually, that is the exact reason why I personally haven't gotten into it, aside from the fact that I have a million things I'm studying. So it's definitely been on my to-do list, but I've been very concerned, just like what you're talking about, what are they doing with this information? I don't know if I want people knowing my DNA. So right. I'm glad that there's companies out there like you're mentioning that are really, keeping it private, because I don't trust everyone in this world. I mean, you could probably understand why.
It's important. We need to watch out for number one. So yeah, it's a good. I get that too.
Is the test expensive?
No, I don't think relatively it's not, because you're also getting guided advice so that you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. The cost is for these 26 genes. So each test is a little different price, but for the women's health panel, it's $225. And right now, that's currently what it is. That's always subject to change, but it's only $225 right now. So.
Okay. And then how soon do people get their results?
How soon? That's within usually 10 business days or up to 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not too long. That's some lab tests take, I have some labs I run and they take up to a month. It's like, come on now. But I realized that it doesn't really matter for me in a lot of cases, because there's so much I already know I need to do in that month that we can wait. we can prep them for after they get that information.
There's always more to do, right? There's always more that we can do for our bodies. But sometimes we've gotten these tests back as early as 5 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really a fast turnover. So how often do people need to rerun the test?
So that's another question I often get too. It's not, so the genes don't change. So we're born with them, they stay the same. So when we run these tests and we see what's strong and what's weak, we know that those are going to stay that way. However, like I said, how we treat them, so the environment is what changes. So, and that's what I teach people. It's like, how do we change to strengthen how the genes behave? That makes sense?
Yes, that makes complete sense. So if you guys missed that, how the genes behave, that is the most important part. It's not that fact that you, like I was born with a couple of family members on both sides that had cancer, right? I don't have to sit here and think, oh, I'm going to be doomed, I'm going to have cancer. I can't tell you how liberating it was when I heard that lecture at Hippocrates Health Institute and realized, oh my God, I'm not doomed to get cancer. It's the environment, like you're talking about, the environment that we put the genes in. What does the terrain in our body look like? This is why we have to make sure that our blood cells are cleaned up and sparkly and shiny. But in order for that to happen, you have to go down this huge rabbit hole of let's clean out all the parasites and fungus and candida, et cetera. And let's make sure we address all the deficiencies, like what you're talking about, which is just so beautiful how you can get specific with a person and what their particular body needs more or less of, based on their genes.
Yes, exactly. So it's targeted. It's precision nutrition. So that's what I love about this. It's really understanding what this person in front of me, what they need to become stronger and how to enhance it. I'm one of those too. My grandmother had breast cancer. And so I always thought for so many years that, it was probable for me. So I'd always do the typical checks and go get my blood work. Never a problem. I did have a scare though with some lumps. I had fibrocystic breasts at one time. And then that's when I was starting to figure out how all this plays. And I started taking more vegetables that have sulfur in them, the DIM. I started doing more of that. And so I continually do that because as I age, the chance of me getting a breast cancer is probable. It's in my family. But I'm doing preventative things so that hopefully, knock on wood, I won't have a problem with that. So I'm taking control over that.
Yeah. So what, since we're talking about DIM, what foods do you eat for that?
Mostly the sulfur-containing foods. So onions, garlic, lots of broccoli, and let's see, leeks. Trying to think what else. There's so much. Cauliflower, right?
A lot of cruciferous vegetables, it sounds like, right?
Cruciferous, exactly. Sulfuring. So those help with estrogen clearance. So that's one of the things that in my genetic test, I found that, yeah, I do have a weakness. And of course, my grandmother had it. So, yeah.
So if people have too much estrogen, then they're more likely to have the lumps in their breast.
Probable. Yeah, it depends. So caffeine, chocolate, lots of coffee, that can certainly cause the problem. And for me, that's what I was doing a few years ago. I was eating a lot of chocolate and living life and having my coffee. I was having daily cappuccinos and mochas. And, yeah, that was before I knew better. And I started realizing, hey, I had painful breasts, and I went into the doctor and I had a couple of scares because they weren't sure what that was, and went to the MRI, and I had very dense breasts. So it was difficult to see. So, I had to take several visits, and I'm like, oh God, here it comes. My grandma had it. Maybe I'm going to get it too. I hope this isn't it. But, that's when I really started paying attention to my body and started asking questions and saying, what can I do to change this? Like, I might not live.
Why do you think caffeine and chocolate are not good for people?
No, they're not. There's good things in them, right? There's some good components. But for example, if I'm trying to help a client to eliminate or cut back on coffee, because I've run allergy tests on them, I will try to get them to switch to green tea because that's much, much healthier. And it still gives them a little boost.
Do you think that it's because it's acidic? I'm just, there's the whole debate. Like there's some practitioners that think it's okay. And then there's some that are just like, it's the devil. So I always like to ask why. Like, why is it so good?
Great. So that's a good question. So that's what I ask too, is like, because I have most people come in and they say, I can't do without my coffee. Haven't we all heard that?
Right. Yeah.
You're like, I'm not.
And obviously there's a point where it's too much. I mean, your part will be like this.
Yes. So I actually run allergy tests if people want to know and sometimes I ask them, can we find out? Can we run this test? And a lot of times they will find out whether or not they're allergic to coffee bean. So I will then try to switch them and give them to a better alternative. But, we've heard like on mainstream media how good coffee is. And then a couple weeks later, we hear it's not good for you. And then some other university runs a test. And, it's good for you again. So it's true. There's benefits to coffee. Same with chocolate. But it's not for everyone. And usually chocolate's combined with what?
Sugar.
Yeah. I found some chocolates though that don't have sugar in it. So that's where I'm like, the cacao bean itself actually seems like it has a lot of healing benefits and in nutrients, magnesium and iron, which is why I'm thinking maybe maybe that's why women actually crave that on their period, is because they're lacking those nutrients. But I would get something like Lily's versus something, you know, that is full of sugar. That sugar, I think, is the biggest problem.
It is. Yeah. So
in terms of the chocolate, at least I should say, the coffee, obviously, if people are loading that with sugar, that's a whole different story in itself too.
Yeah. So yeah, we could certainly talk a while about that, but yeah, there's benefits to both, but it's not good for each person. This is where the individual care comes from. So we really want to find out, does this person do well with it?
That's a great way to tie that into what we're talking about, because that's the question all the time is, well, what should I eat? And then we want to just lump everyone in this category, like just follow this diet. And then we wonder why do some people do better with vegan, or why do some people do better with keto, or why do some people do better with paleo, and whatever their diet is that they're trying to do. So I think that there could be seasons too, that people need to walk through certain types of diet and fasting and lifestyle, like certain situations, because if you're really sick, it's a whole different story than if you're just kind of off. I think a lot of people are really off. That's just a whole different story, but really off and then very sick could be, you know, a huge difference on how we address someone's health issue. But that's a great point though. You know, back to tie it back into the coffee and the chocolate, that maybe in general, it might not be the best thing, but maybe for certain types of people and their genetic structure, it's not really that bad. Providing you're doing it organic, you're not putting it full of sugar, you're getting good sources, etc. Obviously, I want to put that disclaimer because I don't want you to go to Starbucks and think, well, I'm good, I'm clear. You know, you got to make sure that you're not putting all that extra stuff that's making it toxic, as well as buying beans that are sprayed with all kinds of stuff as well too.
Right, exactly. That's what I try to tell people. I do try to work with them and meet them where they're at. So if they're not going to give up their coffee, I say, okay, then please go to organic. Like find a way, if you're going to make coffee at home, or if you're going to go out and buy, make sure that you're purchasing organic. You want something that hasn't had a lot of pesticides and herbicides sprayed on it.
Yeah. You want to talk about turning negative genes on.
Yeah, exactly. So sugar's toxic. It's to every person, everyone. Some people can tolerate it better than others, but for the most part, I'm trying to find alternatives for people that are wanting to do, you know, sweeteners and have sweet things. So your taste buds change too. So you can adapt. So I do let people know that. So
that's so true.
They want to get serious about their health. They can eventually cut out the sugar, and they'll feel better for it.
Right. That was huge for me too. And even fruit sugars, carb sugars. I mean, even if it's not sugar, there's a lot of ways that we can boost our blood sugar, and we need to be cognizant of where that's coming from. Obviously, white sugar is like probably the worst, but you still might be getting too much of these other types of sugar sources. So I'm sure with your testing that you could probably dive deeper into that, whether someone can eat more or less fruit and things like that as well too.
Right. Yeah, it's important to make sure that we get a well-rounded diet, and fruit is fine, but you can't have 10 servings a day and expect to be really healthy, right? We've got to balance that out with more of the healthy fibers and proteins, fats, of course, vegetables. So yeah, it all plays into the overall health.
Yeah. All right, Wendy. Well, I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation with nutrition and how it relates to genetics. And I really can't help but feel that some people listening to this, or maybe even a lot of people listening to this, are going to be quite liberated in many ways. As you were talking about genetics, I started getting this picture of when you're looking at that report, it's almost like you're seeing your future if you don't take these steps. And how powerful is that? It's like, I mean, you can almost look into your future, and I mean, you can take the good road or you can take the bad road. And that probably does not sound like the good road. And then who knows what else can turn on. I mean, that's probably a portion of it. And then you're more likely to have maybe a weak liver if you have a SNP for that, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to have other issues in our body too, right?
Right, exactly. So it really boils down to how we treat our genes. And so your genes want good sleep. They want good rest, not just sleep, but rest. They want good nutrition. They also your genes want to make sure that you are supported on all levels and you're happy and healthy. So you get rewarded with a longer life and just overall happiness. You know, life is good when we have our health.
Yeah.
So I try to focus on that on every person that comes in to see me. So it's like, let's make things better.
Yeah.
So now we have this technology, we can really work towards that now. So we have information to help better our lives.
And it's on a chemical level that when our body's healthy, it actually makes those neurotransmitters, like we mentioned, the serotonin that makes us happy. So it's not, health and happiness are so intertwined. It's unbelievable. And I wish that more people could see that connection. So Wendy, sure, we could dive into this whole thing a lot more, but for the sake of time, where can people find you to gather more information if they are looking into this?
So my website is nutritionworks.vegas, and I also have a Facebook page, and that's Nutrition Works of Las Vegas.
Okay. Are you on Instagram too, by any chance?
I am. I'm not as versed on Instagram. I'm trying. But I'm Health Detective LV for Las Vegas. So Health Detective LV.
Okay, LV. All right. I'll have that in the show notes as well.
Thank you. So yeah, people can get a hold of me on my website too. I have a direct link of contact me, and that links directly to an email. That's the fastest way to get a hold of me.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for unfolding this for us. It's a newer topic that I've brought on my show. I've talked a little bit about genetics with Dr. Choksi, and that was a fabulous talk. But I love how we were able to get into the SNPs today a little bit and why that's important, and how we need to really think about how we can support our genes with our nutrition, and that it's not necessarily a one size fits all. This is why not all diet plans, or I hate the word diet, but nutrition plans don't work for everyone. So Wendy, I just want to thank you so much for your time. It's an honor to interview on the show. And I already know that so many people were blessed listening to this.
Wonderful. I appreciate you getting in touch with me and letting me talk. So I'm really glad that we had this visit today. So thanks, Dr. Jacqueline.
And listeners, I just want to thank you again for coming and listening to this, engaging every week. Make sure to like and subscribe and continue to follow the content. I'm really excited to share this information with you every single week. I hope that you are as excited to pick these people's brains just like I am. So we will continue again next week, and God bless. I hope you got a lot of nuggets from that episode. There's just so much to learn as a woman and helping balance our body and be able to give life to a newborn and raise these healthy children. And then, of course, we don't want to get wrinkles when we grow old. And a lot of us are losing our mind and we're losing our joints. I mean, there's so much. And then on top of that, then there's weight loss. Have you ever thought about, man, it'd be so much easier to be able to lose weight if I did not crave that cake every day or some other bad thing like cookies, etc.? Well, we have Gluco Optimizer. So along with your CellCore protocol, you can add the Gluco Optimizer in to help balance your blood sugar, help fight those cravings. And you'll see here, there's a lot of other things it does. It protects against heart disease. It helps increase muscle mass. Now, as a woman, you might think, I don't want to have big muscles, but I'm one that doesn't have big muscles, and I work out all the time and lift a lot of weight. Lean muscle keeps you thin. So with that and the combination of something like Gluco Optimizer, weight loss is going to be a lot easier nowadays, you guys. All right, ladies, I hope you enjoyed that show again. Go ahead and check out Gluco Optimizer so you can optimize your weight loss program.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Trinity podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more wellness tips to help you achieve optimal health. Don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.